get to do each and every week. And man, what a show we have in store for you today. Now, what we generally do on the Rob Ellis Show is we get to sit down with people I really admire in the business, people who have longevity, staying power, people who have done it. And I'm not sure that we've had a guest or will have a guest that personifies this better than our man today, Howard Eskin, the king himself. He has been the king in the city of Philadelphia in sports radio, sports TV, sports media for pushing 50 years, even though he's only 21 years old. I know the math doesn't quite work out, but
24. I think it's 24.
You're 24. Yeah. I understand. I don't want to cheat you there, Howard. I know you're 24. But Howard, first off, welcome in, man. We appreciate you giving us a couple minutes today. How you doing?
Well, as everybody should know, I've never had a bad day in my life. So I may have had bad moments. I may have seen bad games. I may have seen bad players, but I have not had a bad moment. It's just, a bad day, bad moments, not bad days.
You overcome. By the way, the hair looking perfect today. You're having a good hair day today. You are right on point, man.
Well, some of us have a lot of hair, so you can you do the best with it.
It's one of the great advantages to being a handsome fellow like you are, Howard.
Absolutely correct.
Yes. I want to do this. Usually, we're going to walk through, kind of the life and the career journey. But I want to hit you with this first. Our A to D question of the day that we have for you, because I know you and I have had this discussion. Will the Flyers win a cup before the Sixers win a championship? Agree or disagree?
I've already said that, and I'll give you my order of Philadelphia. The next team with the best chance to win a championship. Obviously the Eagles, then the Phillies, although I don't think they're not going to do it this year. Then I think the Flyers come before the Sixers because they because they wanted to do it, but they're starting at the bottom. So and that's the only way to get better. The Sixers refuse to start at the bottom, and they have one good player if they get rid of the center and they don't bring Harden back. So they can start that way, but they're going to just wallow along and they're not going to have a chance. This team has no chance. When I say no, you can put capital letters on N and O to win a championship with the makeup of this team. So I say the Flyers, yes, are ahead of the Sixers.
Okay. All right. Now, what you said they have one good player. Is that one good player Maxey, and it's not Joel Embiid? People would assume you meant Joel Embiid.
Well, no. See, because for me, Joel Embiid's maybe got two good years left, if they're going to be good years, but he's hurt every year. So I would trade Joel Embiid and keep Maxey. That's the way you got. That's the way you got to build it up. You just can't keep a guy trying to con the fans and make them believe that you have a chance for a championship because you keep on raising ticket prices. Oh, we got a chance at a championship. Oh, yeah, we're great. Okay. When you watch Denver, you realize the culture at Denver is a winning culture. The culture with the Sixers is, well, let Joel get his points. Let Harden be happy and, whether he comes back or not. And they just don't have that winning culture. Obviously, we've seen that in the playoffs. And that's why I won't say they're light years away from a championship, but they're not at the top of the rung with teams that have the best chance to win a championship. Milwaukee's ahead of them, and they got bounced this year. But Denver is a pretty good team, and their team's intact the way they built that team. That fraud of a president general manager has no clue how to build a good team, and he's never, and you can capitalize those 5 letters too for people that don't know there's 5 letters in the word never. Never put a good team, a championship caliber team together. Never.
Yeah, and I know you were opposed to the process. You fought the processors the entire way, and including your son Spike. You fought the processors, and now you see it, and you're saying to yourself, this team can't go any further than they went when they tore the thing down and tried to do this.
Well, that's why it didn't work. They say, well, they got all those. I love the word assets. What position does asset play? All these assets, great. But the only player they've gotten out of that draft trying to lose was Embiid. And the only reason they got him is because he was a medical issue when he came out of college. And they liked that because they knew he'd probably have to take off a year so they could lose another year. It doesn't work. Boston did it for 1 year. Houston did it for 1 year. And I believe San Antonio did it for 1 year. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. Try to get a pick. You can't keep on doing it because then you create the culture of losing. It doesn't really work, especially when you got morons at the top trying to make draft picks. Scam Hinkie was the first one in line. And then after that, Colangelo made some mistakes, obviously, but it wasn't his choice. I found out he wasn't the big proponent behind Markelle Fultz.
Oh,
so
that
right? No, it was the guy that's now with Detroit. He was pushing him hard, and a lot of people were pushing him hard. And Boston would have never made the trade if they thought the Sixers were going to take Tatum. They wanted Tatum all along, so that was never going to happen. So this process nonsense doesn't work. Now, what I'm saying is to start over, it's not a process because you already have one good player. The Sixers got rid of all the good players. Drew Holiday was one of the best point guards in basketball for years and still very, very good. And they got rid of him, and they got that stiff Michael Carter-Williams and Nerlens Noel that year. That was a joke. So it doesn't work to do it that way. The process for those Kool-Aid drinking morons and dopes, it just doesn't work.
Yes.
It doesn't work.
So Flyers will win before the Sixers. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the Sixers, get rid of Embiid. You're not going to win with them. So kind of start the process. And if Daryl Morey had made the proper trade instead of Harden and gotten Halliburton and Buddy Hield, and I know that for a fact, and given up one last draft pick for a fact, that would have been a great backcourt. And all this talk about Bradley Beal.
Oh, no,
he's not a point guard,
and he's hurt all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a joke. And then Van Bleek they can't get because now he's declared free agent. Free agency. Too expensive, so it doesn't fit.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, good. So I want to hit you with in a little bit one other present day, question that's happening here for an agree to disagree. But I kind of want to walk through the journey, Howard, because I think you're the ultimate Philadelphia story. Grew up in the Northeast, diehard sports fan as a kid. Correct me if I'm wrong. Season ticket holder to the Sixers when you were younger.
Yeah, my father was season ticket holder for the Sixers and the Phillies.
Yeah.
Yep.
So is that where it was ingrained in you, the love of sports from your dad? Like, how did you get that bug that we all seem to have?
Well, it was my father, and then I have three sisters and a brother, and they were all sports fans because my father was a big sports fan. So we had floor seats at the Sixers, opposite the Sixers bench, and until they got outrageously expensive, and it's extortion now what the Sixers do to those people, trying to con them to believe they're going to win a championship. But it was fun. It was just wherever it was in the building. But we had front row seats, and I used to yell at the officials all the time and yell at the players. So that was fun, too. But, yeah, it was my father. My father deserves, but the whole family was sports fans. My father really deserves the credit because I was raised in a household of sports. That's what I wanted to do, but I did a lot of other things before I did that in the business of radio.
All right. So when did you look, at that point, there wasn't sports talk radio necessarily. There wasn't, yes, you had your local news, but there wasn't the kind of stuff that you have now. So at what point did you realize I want to try to make a living out of this? And I know your first gig was behind the scenes, correct? You were a producer for the great George Michael at WFIL. Is that correct?
Okay. It goes before that.
Okay.
I worked at I was a production engineer, and I did production. Engineer was the term we used at a classical music station in Washington, D.C. So I got to go in the White House when security wasn't tight, walk through the White House because I had to record interviews with certain people. And that was kind of cool back in the day. Yeah. So, in this Senate office building I've been into. But so there's a lot of things in Washington that I did, but it was a classical music station. And that was one of my first jobs. I was a board op, and I guess in the days now they call them board ops, at an FM station. And I worked at the first station in America that went, and they used the term progressive rock. And that was the first station in America in Bethesda, Maryland. and they had what were called hippies at the time, the guys from Georgetown in the Washington area that had all this music. I'll give you a little trivia question. Eric Clapton's first band was what? And you don't know it.
It wasn't Derek and the Dominoes.
Nope.
Ew.
You got no shot. Ultimate Spinach. No, Ultimate Spinach. And I have the album of Ultimate Spinach. And that's the kind of stuff that they played. But they couldn't do it. So I had to run the operations for these guys. These guys were in the movie Woodstock. That's how big these guys were. They were prominently featured in the movie Woodstock. For those people, there's a lot of people that won't remember that, but it's historical. And so I was there. Then I was, I guess, an announcer at a station in Virginia. Then I was a disc jockey at stations.
Did you meet any of these guys? Any of these big bands of the 60s or 70s? Did you ever have?
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Led Zeppelin.
You met Zeppelin?
Wait a minute. I went out and did the town with Rod Stewart, and that was at another station I worked at. I was a weekend disc jockey at a station in Gaithersburg, Maryland, and Rod Stewart was out promoting. It was 5 months before his first hit, Maggie May.
Yeah.
And it was the Yellow Epic album. I have that album too. I'll never forget it. I don't know if there were any hits. Off of that album, but he came into the studio because he was playing. He was doing a gig at a place called the Wheaton Youth Center right outside Washington, D.C. in Maryland. So he came in. We hung out. He was in, and I had him on the air. And then we went out and partied in Washington, D.C.
Oh
I was a kid. I partied with Rod Stewart.
That's awesome.
So the Rolling Stones. I'm trying to think of the others, but there were quite a few back then. Because then it wasn't as difficult, and the program director at that station was very tight with people, as George Michael was. I met the Beatles at WFIL radio when I was an engineer at Board Op, because they came in for a charity weekend because George Michael got them to come in. So WFIL was down the line, and I was happy with that. I didn't care. I just wanted to be in radio, and that's where I actually started doing sports. Nobody in the news department covered sports, so I asked the news director if I can go down and just get the interviews and do them. That's kind of where it started, and that started me on my way, and people saw me, and then it led to being a sports reporter at WCAU radio. Years later, that was probably seven years after I started my career, I replaced Joe Banner as a sports reporter at WCAU radio. Joe Banner was a sports reporter, the former Eagles CEO or president, I guess it was. So I replaced him because he went to start a business back up in the New England area where he was from. So there's so many things, and that led to my first talk show at an FM station, 96.5. It was WWDB, which those call letters exist somewhere.
Yeah.
And I did a talk show there, and it became very, very successful. And that led to my first television job, which I never had planned, at Channel 3, because the show on talk radio was so successful, and they wanted somebody to do something on TV which was unique. How about give an opinion?
Yeah, well, it's funny now, like you see, it's all it is now, right? But back then,
on TV shows, not on TV sportscasts,
right? But right. That's the point. Like it used to be just, hey, here's the Phillies did this, and here's the score, and blah 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 blah, and here's what the manager said afterwards. There were very few people, giving takes, Howard, and you were the original takesman.
Yeah, I don't like to call it a take. I had an opinion.
Yeah,
and that's what Channel 3 wanted me to do when I came to television. They wanted me to have an opinion.
Yeah.
And I did. And to just do highlights, it's boring. Everybody just does highlights. You never remember what you saw, where you saw it. But if somebody says something, people remember that. And that's part of the entertainment factor. And you got to be entertaining somewhere in that newscast. You could do it probably in weather, and Jim O'Brien did it at Channel 6 for those people that remember Jim.
And he was one of your mentors, right? Jim O'Brien.
He was the biggest, he and George Michael. And I'll put Jim a little ahead of it because he pushed me into television when I didn't want to take the job at Channel 3. He pushed me. He said he'd kick my ass if I didn't take the job. I mean, they offered me a job. I never worked TV in my life.
That's wild.
Yeah. So I train in a major market, which now TV just hires people. But now, and they trained me into production and what to do. And they sent me to a coach in New York, which a lot of network people have worked with. Mike Emmerich, the retired hockey guy, tells me stories about a woman named Lillian Wilder, who they sent me to New York, and she coached me. And, she's scared the living daylights out of you, but she guided me to do things, and doing radio helped because I was myself, real and natural. Just be yourself. And that's what I tried to be on TV. I didn't try to be something I wasn't. I didn't care that, I'm on TV. That's most of the people on TV now. That's all they care about. I'm on TV. No, that's not what it's all about. It's talking to people. And that's what I did. I talked to people. I didn't read to people.
Let me ask you, Howard, because not everybody can handle the backlash. In other words, you're a very opinionated guy. You're not afraid to put it out there. Fans coming at you, teams coming at you, players coming at you. Yeah, you've dealt with all of it over the years.
I've been threatened by many players.
Yeah, I know. I listen. I hear you. Was that something that took you a little while to get used to, or did you never really care about that part of it?
Okay, early in my sports talk show career, and I did sports talk on FM before people were even thinking about it, because they were a talk station, but they had a 2-hour segment at night from 6 to 8, sports talk. So the program director there, because I was nice to everybody. Imagine that, me being nice to everybody. You were nice to,
hold on.
I know.
Excuse me?
Yeah, I was nice to everybody. He says, you know what, if you have an opinion, don't be afraid to express it. So I got more and more comfortable telling people, that, hey, listen, you're a moron. No, you're worse than that. You're a dope. Are you kidding me? Yeah, nitwit. Are you kidding me? So I was not afraid. I got to the point where I built it up to express the way I really felt. And there's a lot of people that consider that a badge of honor. And I'll tell you a story, and I won't tell you the entertainer, but there's a huge entertainer in this country whose father was a big fan of mine, listening to me on WWDB Talk Radio at first. And I met him in the area, and we've become friendly, and we've become friends since. Yeah. So I don't want to put that out there because it seems like, I have people climbing all over me. But those are the kind of people, and I have people that still say to this day that they started listening to me there, and then their kids started listening to me. So I'm through generations, because you can't. The one thing you shouldn't sound old. Don't sound old just because you may be older. You're never old. You're just older. You can't sound old. You got to entertain, but I always believe that you could entertain while you could inform while entertaining. So I always believe that.
Well, it's also unique that you've been able to have a captive audience while going after people. In other words, you're not on there like trying to be everybody's buddy, right? You'll call a caller out and, nitwit, dope, moron, all that kind of stuff. But for some reason, they'll tune back in. They'll continue to. It's almost done in I don't want to say a loving way, but it's done in a way where it's not. I don't know. It's not as personal as it sounds with some others. Is that a fine line there?
I don't know where the line is, but I do know that I've seen people, because I go to a lot of events to try to pick up little tidbits of information, get to know people. So if something's happening, I can get in touch with somebody and try to get some information on it. But I do that, and I see a lot of people, and a lot of people consider it a badge of honor to be called a dope. Hey, you called me a dope on the air. Really? I got the dope that quick, huh? People either love me or hate me, but I think they respect me. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the deal. You got to have some respect. You got to have respect. Love me or hate me, it doesn't matter to me, because hate's a terrible word. I never like to use the word hate.
Yeah.
I just express myself. And in most cases, because I'm a visionary, in most cases, I'm right. Well, was I a visionary about the Sixers? Yes. Was I a visionary about Jokic, Embiid. 3 years ago, I said this. Yes, was I? Yes, I was a visionary. You know, it's not the only. It's not the only team and people and players where I was a visionary. But you know, I say that tongue in cheek.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, you look at things, you talk to people, you understand. Ben Simmons. You know, almost from day one, I said, "Nah, this guy." He's not good. Some people called him a generational player and a future Hall of Famer. Are you kidding? But I talked to people in the league and coaches, and they told me this guy just didn't want to do the things it took to get better. Now he's gone, and we've moved on. But I took so much heat over Jokic, Embiid, and you got to suck it up. You know, it just, you can't worry about offending somebody. I mean, players. You know, Mitch Williams wanted to and just deck me. He says, his line was, I just want to punch you. He didn't like what I said on the air when he was trying to get a new contract. And I knew I was right, actually, because you don't give guys long-term contracts that throw hard because they can lose it just like that. So he said, I just want to punch you in the mouth. He says, why don't we step outside the locker room and you can do that? And, you know, you just get a lot of money out of me. So, you know, he would have killed me, but you know, he's not the only one.
Yeah.
You know, it just, and Mitch and I are friends now. You know, Darryl Dawkins, may he rest in peace. You know, I ripped him for getting 2 rebounds in 30 minutes. My girlfriend told me you ripped me. I says, Darryl, you're close to 7 feet. You got 2 rebounds in 30 minutes. What am I supposed to say? You played great. Right. I mean, come on now, give me a break.
All right,
so he understood that.
Hold that thought, because we're going to quick short timeout. We'll come back, because I think the biggest thing that the players and the organizations respect about you is you show up, and that can't be said for everybody. So just hold tight, real quick, Howard. We'll get a quickie in. We'll come back. We're talking with Howard Eskin right here on the Rob Ellis Show. We'll be right back.
Hey, Birds fans, the NFL schedule has arrived and Philly Sports Trips has all the details now. Visit the site phillysportstrips.com. This is sure to be an epic season. Be sure to go there now to make sure that you don't get shut out. Join us in Tampa, LA, Seattle, or when we get revenge in Kansas City. Don't want to fly? No problem. Gather up your crew and hop aboard one of our signature boisterous bus trips to DC or New York. Sign up now and make sure to mention A2D. Don't miss out on the best Philly fan experience anywhere. Philly Sports Trip customers always stay at the best hotels and meet NFL legends. Book today.
All right, we are back with Howard Eskin on the Rob Ellis Show, A2D Radio. All right, Howard, so before we took the timeout, that's the thing, you know, I think with you, if you're going to call somebody out on the air like you are not afraid to do, you darn well better show your face and not be afraid to show up.
Oh, sure.
Have you found that over the years that that's something that, you know, either the players, the coaches, or the managers, at least, yes, you might get into it for a second with them, but at least because you're there, there's more understanding and more willingness to kind of talk it out a little bit.
I'm not what I call hit and run drivers. Talk radio people are hit and run drivers. They hit them, they run, and you never see them. Richie Ashburn said to me one time, may he rest in peace, what a great guy. Richie says, I don't know why these players talk to you. He said, I guess you show up all the time so they can, and I've always told those. Jason Worth, we really had it out at the end of one season. And I said, because after I had the fight with Charlie Manuel, I ripped him on ESPN, called him a marginal major league ball player. And he saved that the whole year. And then when they won the division, he poured champagne on me out of anger, not out of happiness, when I'm wearing my suit doing TV. Oh. So he says, marginal major league ball player? I says, you waited all season to discuss that with me? After these playoffs are over, we got to talk. And they lost that year I think it was Colorado.
Right.
We got to talk. So we did. And now we're actually good friends. But once you sit down but I'm there. If you want to discuss it, I will. Charlie Manuel and I are very friendly. We talk He's there almost at every game, sits in the press box, and we BS a lot. So, they get over it. And, the thing I always say to Charlie, I says, I'm going to drop you right here.
Yeah.
That's what he said to me.
I remember. Yeah. You wanted to come on my office. I've been grown up, Howard.
Yeah, I've been grown up. Yeah. It's just, so you you really should show up, because then they have more respect for you. I mean, I have a little, sparring matches with Rob Thompson, the Phillies manager, every once in a while, but he understands it because he sees me and we get along very well. Glenn Rivers finally understood me. The former Sixers coach finally understood me, and we get along fine, but he knows that there's times that I'm going to come at him. And that's part of what I do. It's Nick Nurse. I kind of got that, but it wasn't even a big deal. He never answered the question. So I said, you didn't answer the question. Yeah. So about James Harden and Daryl Morey, going after him because he's easy to go after. They are in trouble. But that's another story probably for another day. Mm-hmm. So, but you're there. Do I want to go to those news conferences and listen to all that nonsense and that PR spin? No, I don't. But sometimes you pick out a little nugget and you might have a question, which some people, I don't know why people take so long to ask questions when there's obvious questions that need to be asked. And that's what I do. I mean, it's just so whatever.
Let's talk about breaking stories, Howard, because you've broken a lot of stuff over the years, big stuff. How did you develop those chops? Is it part of it is you show up all the time? I get that. So you're talking to a lot of different people, but what, not to give everything away here, but what goes into that process? And that's another thing. You better be right if you're going to break something like that, or else you're going to catch a lot of heat.
Well, there's some really important ones and there's some that aren't. I had a story and I took heat from Dave Montgomery's family when I found out the Phillies were going to push him out. John Middleton started to edge his way in it, and John just did all the right things. Yeah. And somewhere along the way, they decided it was time to move on. David was never mad at me, and we were good friends in years before that. He never was mad at me because he knew I had the right story. Mm-hmm. And there's different stories like that. Mike Krukow always tells a story. He still does some games for the San Francisco Giants, former pitcher with the Phillies. Mm-hmm. I went on the air and I reported what was going to be a trade with Mike Krukow, and he heard it on the air. He got a call, and he tells people this story. He got a call the next morning. He knew before he even answered the phone what the call was about.
Wow.
Because he knew he had been traded, because I had it on the air. That's kind of, you don't want to be wrong in those things, but that's not life and death. But there's so many other I've broken more stories than anybody in anybody in the city, whether it's news or sports, because what you do is you know people, and you find out you have people that are comfortable to talk to you because they know you're not going to out them.
Right.
And it's just like, I'm like the FBI. I mean, there's some stories you got to hold back. Julius Erving being traded to the Sixers. It was the ABA, NBA, and they were going to merge. And I had the Sixers making a deal with the Nets for Julius Erving. And I called Pat Williams, then the general manager. He always called me Howie. He says, Howie, you can't go with that yet. It's very delicate. I said, Pat, I mean, I know you're making a trade. Mm-hmm. He says, you can't go. I said, but you got to call me before you do it. So he did. Okay. And I broke that story too.
Wow.
I mean, it's just, so there's some big ones, some big ones along the way. People being fired, whatever. It's just trades. There's other things. There's so many. I guess I got to keep notes on what when I write my book, and publishers have asked me to write a book. So I try to put down notes of stories that I've broken. And that's the fun part of it. Mm-hmm. That's a sense of accomplishment. And you get to know so many people that I have in my phone. I have 5,700 contacts in my phone.
You better hope that's like a playbook in football. You better not lose that thing, man. That can get ugly.
It's on the cloud.
All right, there you go.
It's on the cloud.
All right,
So,
I got to hit you with this. So you work your way. You go to Fox. You're their first Fox 29's first sports anchor there in '86. But you end up at WIP when WIP kicks off right around the same time, and eventually you do afternoon drive for what 25 years. What and hold it down for an incredibly long period of time as
yes.
the preeminent guy. How hard is it on a daily basis to be able to crank out that kind of 4 hours every single day and do it at that high level?
Well, I'll tell you, the general manager, it was MMR and WIP were the same company at the time. And once I went to Fox, it was only a 10 o'clock news. And a guy named Mike Craven, and Mike, I still talk to Mike occasionally, he says, I want to make WIP an all sports station. Would you do afternoons? He said, you're only doing 10 o'clock news? I said, sure. I'd love to, because I did talk radio at that FM station earlier. I'd love to. So that's how it started. And here's what I can't believe that I did. Now we got, Odyssey has so many contacts. They can get so many guests. They had no contacts back then. I got and I say all my own guests for 25 years because I knew so many people. I could connect with so many people. Literally, I got all my own guests. And that was the hardest part. Doing the show, there's some, dead spots and lulls and things that are going on in sports, but very successful for 25 years. And then after 25, I said, change is important in the pursuit of success. Was something Doug Collins actually told me on the last day of my show. Not only did I do the first show on WIP AM, I did the first show on WIP FM 94.1.
I followed you that day, actually.
Because the president of CBS at the time, we were CBS Radio, Dan Mason, was a big fan of mine. And I asked, they were supposed to go on the Monday, not the Friday of my last day. I says, can I do the first show on FM? It would be great. He said, so he talked to the people there. He says, if Howard wants to do it, we're doing it. Nice. We're starting WIP on FM. It was September 2nd, September 2nd, 20. Was it 2011?
It was around there. Yeah.
Yeah. I forget when it was, but it was September 2nd. I know that when we started, and I did the first one on FM too. So how many people started two sports talk stations in the country?
Cool. That's pretty cool.
So it's part of it. Yeah. But it's fun. 25 years was enough. I wanted to just leave. And then the Eagles sideline stuff came up and they created some other things for me to do. And because they didn't want to lose me, I had been approached by the guy that ran the network for Dan Patrick, because I did his show a few times, and he wanted me to do something on a national level. So I thought about it, but then I didn't do it because I said, why should I leave WIP?
Yeah.
And then so I stayed and just do what I do. And hell, during football season, I'm on 6 days a week.
You're more
anyway.
busy than you were back then. I want to get to sidelines in a second, but I do want to circle back. You also weren't afraid to take some chances here and there. Like you did, it didn't work out, but you took a shot. The sports rock format.
Yep. I knew
for people who may not remember, what was that?
They wanted to do. They were trying to do something different because John DeBella, who's retiring too, right. They were afraid that it couldn't sustain itself, that morning zoo. So they wanted to try to do something else. And the general manager, who was the general manager that got me to WIP, was also the general manager at WMMR. Okay. So it was his idea. He wanted to try it. And I'm willing to take chances. I mean, going to TV was a chance. Doing that was a chance. But there's no reward without risk. And you've got to do it. I mean, I've done a lot of startups. Hey, Channel 29. Yep. I was the first anchor that Channel 29 hired in 1986. Yep. And I said, boy, I'm going to a station. It's not a network affiliate. Mm-hmm. It was owned by Taft, which owned the Phillies. So I could do some pre and post game stuff for the Phillies at that time. So I said, yeah, why not? And it was a tough thing. And I would have stayed at Channel 3, as it turns out, for a lot less money. but the general manager at that time didn't want to do it. All I wanted to do was move money from the third year, which wasn't guaranteed at Channel 3 from the offer they make me, to the first year, and he wouldn't do it. And so I said, okay, I'm done. And I made literally 6 figures more by going to another station, and I was willing not to take that because I was loyal to Channel 3.
Wow.
You know, money was not. You always like to make money, and I sent 5 kids to private school and college, and luckily I was able to do that. But that wasn't my driving force. Success and doing the best job you can. And I took risks. I mean, I started Channel 29. I started WIP. You know, think about the things that I've done, and I take pride in that. And that's, there always is risk. So you do it. If it doesn't work, you try to pivot to do something else.
You had a very unique situation where your son was your boss. Now, that's not usually the case in life, Howard. It usually works the other way around. Your son Spike was the program director at WFP, now at WFAN and CBS Radio. They call them brand managers now. They're not program director.
Yeah,
whatever the goofy
whatever the title is.
We know what it means, right? But how weird was that dynamic for you guys?
We never talked about business.
Okay.
We just fought about the Sixers because he was one of those Kool-Aid drinking idiots.
Yeah.
But he did a great job. He's came up. All those jobs he got, I got him an internship at Channel 3 was the only thing I got him. Mm-hmm. And when he wanted to come back from Chicago to go to YSP, which was music at the time, which was 94.1 WYSP, I talked to the general manager, who's our general manager now. Mm-hmm. And because he tried to lowball him, I says, hey, listen, you're losing a guy that's making $300,000 a year. Just throw him a bone and give him some more money. And that's the only thing. He got the job himself. Yeah. And he got all his jobs himself. And he's very creative. He's very good at what he does. He's stubborn when it comes to the 76ers. But, you know, hey, listen, if it's only one fault, that's okay. But to work for him was different because it was difficult to talk about work because I'd been there so long. Yeah. But I knew what I had to do. And every once in a while he would mention something. But it all worked out. It all worked out, and it worked out for him. It worked out for me, but it was an interesting dynamic. I think the program director now does contracts with the talent, but he never did my contract because obviously it was a conflict of interest. So the general manager always did from day one, always did my contract. So, you know, so that's the way it worked, but it was an interesting time. We don't talk about the Sixers because all we'll do is argue.
It's a sore spot, yeah. I hear you.
Because he still believes that nonsense.
I know. He's loyal. All right, let me ask you about sideline reporting because I'm sure this was something else you didn't envision, you know, growing up because there wasn't sideline reporters when you were growing up.
Nope.
How did that come about? You're still doing it to this day. What's the most fun part? What's the biggest challenge about it?
Well, it's a lot of work. You're on your feet all day, and I do a pregame show for Fox, so it is all day. But it's a lot of work, and you got to be careful on the sidelines because players, boy, the speed when you're down on the sidelines, the speed and the strength of those players is mind-boggling, and you don't realize it. But I'm more into the game than listening to those guys yell back and forth at each other in the press box because that's what they do a lot of. So I'm away from that nonsense, and I'm into the game. I'm really into the game, and I keep my eyes on everything. The Super Bowl obviously was the highlight of my life, being down there, standing behind Doug Peterson and Nick Foles when they called the Philly special. Now, I didn't hear the play, but I told Joe McPeak, the producer, Merrill says, Mike, I think they got to kick the field goal. I said, Joe, let me tell you something. They ain't kicking the field goal. Merrill wants to put me on. He can put me on. They're not kicking a field goal. Right. I didn't know what the play was, but it's a lot of work. I got my leg broken one year on the sideline. Didn't tell anybody. Worked with a broken leg. It was a fibula, so it's a non-weight bearing bone. I didn't know it for 10 days, but it was so painful. Jeez. I went down. The Torrey Smith second play of the game. A guy tackled. Guy from the Raiders tackled Torrey Smith way out of bounds. I thought I was fine. And he leg whipped me. And I didn't know it, but my leg was broken. I didn't know it for 10 days until I got an x-ray, and I saw it was broken all the way through. But I didn't have to have a cast. I didn't need surgery. I should have worn a boot. But he said, you can get by without a boot, but be careful. But if I had a boot, I couldn't work the sidelines. That was a Super Bowl year. So I worked 5 games through the Super Bowl with a broken leg.
Look at you, you warrior. Unbelievable.
And these players, football players are usually pretty tough.
Yeah.
But these other guys, these softies.
No load management for you, Howard.
Nothing like that.
Well,
but you're really into the game. You watch the coach, you see if he knows what he's doing, if he doesn't get overly crazy. Nick Sirianni goes crazy on the bench, but he gets back into what he has to under control. And that's the one thing that I keep an eye on. He's always under control when he has to make a decision. And so it's interesting to say the least. And you see things, and people don't think I get heat from the Eagles. I get heat from the Eagles, but it's what I do. Yeah, that's right. It's what I do.
All right, last one. We'll get you out of here because we know you have a busy day today. We appreciate your time here. Another agree to disagree question. The Eagles will win a Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts as the quarterback. Agree or disagree?
I agree. I don't know what it's going to be. This is a tough year. It's a tough schedule, tough travel. It's a tough year. Mm-hmm. And only 2 teams that have lost a Super Bowl have gotten back to the Super Bowl the next year only twice in 28 years. A World Series is worse.
Yeah.
So when you lose a World Series. So I don't know if it's going to be this year. I think they got one of the best quarterbacks in the conference. So I think they've got a good chance. But yes, I do think they will win a Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts. I do believe that. And they'll win a championship in this town before anybody else. I mean, how can you say anybody else is going to win a championship before the Eagles? And the Sixers, it's just, Daryl Morey, why is he going to leave a $12 million a year job?
Right, he's not going anywhere.
No, he should be taken out in handcuffs for stealing money.
All right. Listen, catch you on Saturday mornings, 8 a.m. And also your various hits throughout the week.
Yeah, I'm on today,
as well.
Or whenever.
I think Tuesday. I'll be with you Thursday, I think.
Yeah.
I think you and me Thursday.
Well, the Phillies play in the afternoon.
Okay.
So I get blocked out by a Phillies afternoon game. But I'll be on, it's usually Tuesday at 6, Thursday at 6, Thursday in the morning at 8, Saturday. Then when football season starts, the Brandon Graham show on Monday night.
They're working you, man. They're working you. There's no retiring.
Don't they understand this is supposed to be vacation?
Exactly. Howard, thank you, man. I appreciate the walk down memory lane, hearing about the career and just hanging out with you for a couple minutes. Thanks for a couple minutes.
You know what? It's a pleasure for you, I'm sure.
All right, genius. Go do your thing. Get out of here.
See you later.
Thanks, Howard. All right, appreciate it. That's Howard Eskin. We'll get another quick timeout in here on the Rob Ellis Show. We'll come back and we'll run through everything that's happening in the world of Philadelphia sports. Don't go anywhere.
Hey, Birds fans, the NFL schedule has arrived and Philly Sports Trips has all the details now. Visit the site phillysportstrips.com. This is sure to be an epic season. Be sure to go there now to make sure that you don't get shut out. Join us in Tampa, LA, Seattle, or when we get revenge in Kansas City. Don't want to fly? No problem. Gather up your crew and hop aboard one of our signature boisterous bus trips to DC or New York. Sign up now and make sure to mention A2D. Don't miss out on the best Philly fan experience anywhere. Philly Sports Trip customers always stay at the best hotels and meet NFL legends. Book today.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. Rob Ellis Show, A2D, the mighty A2D radio. Fun chatting with Howard. He's never at a loss for opinions, never at a loss to speak his mind. That's for sure. Appreciate it, Thomas. He's a trip, man. The thing with Howard is he may come off on the air as sort of this blustery kind of guy, but I will tell you, does a ton of stuff behind the scenes for charity, and that is very real. Like a lot of stuff for charity, helps a lot of people out, and he is a fun guy to spar with. He is a very fun guy to kind of go back and forth with. That's for sure. And look, you don't have that kind of staying power unless there's a little bit more to it. That's for sure when it comes to Howard, but he is always fun. All right. So let's hit on a couple things. Nuggets win the championship last night. And, really throughout the playoffs, as the playoffs have progressed, and in particular in the NBA championship with the Nuggets and the Heat, I don't know about you, but when I sit there and I watch this, I always draw a comparison to the Sixers. And I say to myself, all right, how far are the Sixers from these teams? I mean, you look at the Nuggets 1-2 combination of Jokic and Jamal Murray. Frankly, it's not close when you're talking about the Sixers. It's just not. I think Embiid deserved the regular season MVP. I defended Joel Embiid a ton. But if I'm being a realist, and I keep it real with you all the time, it's night and day now between he and the Joker for a lot of reasons. The Joker's ability to make people better around him, his ability to pass the basketball. He's the best passing center I have ever seen. And he welcomes you to throw 2-3 at him. Where Embiid, there's still that hesitancy, a little bit of panic. We saw it. We saw it in the Celtics series. So to me, that's what separates the two. Embiid's a better defender, but Joker's a better rebounder. He's as good a scorer, and he's a much better distributor than Joel Embiid. But there is nobody close to Jamal Murray. Harden's not close. Maxey, not there yet. And I love Tyrese Maxey. There's nobody close. And the other part that you see, they have great role players. Look at what Bruce Brown did throughout these playoffs. Big shots last night. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Michael Porter Jr. had an awful series in general, but he stepped up last night. Aaron Gordon, really good. They're role players, guys like Jeff Green coming off the bench. There is no comparison. Tobias Harris goes and hides in big spots, right? You can't find him in big spots. PJ Tucker is incredibly limited. He's a guy who can help you in certain ways, but he's very limited. Much better rounded team is Denver. And they're better coached. Mike Malone is a really good coach. Then you look at the Heat. It was amazing what they were able to accomplish with a lack of talent and injured players. They lose Victor Oladipo. They basically lose Tyler Hero very early in this thing. And they're able to get to a game 5 of an NBA Finals, in part because Jimmy Butler put him on his back, or on collectively on his back. On top of that, you had role players like Strus, like Gabe Vincent, stepping up along the way, and just a team that showed balls, quite frankly. And the Sixers, the opposite. You saw a Sixers team that was scared in a lot of ways and decided to pack their bags and go home. You didn't see that even up until, the end in game 5, the Heat make that run. Jimmy Butler gets going and they take Denver right down to the wire in a great game. The Sixers would have laid down in that circumstance. So look, kudos to Denver. They deserve it. They deserve every bit of it. Let's jump around a little bit here to the Phillies, playing much better baseball. But what you saw on Monday night in Arizona is a team that can't keep going with these bullpen games. They need that 5th starter. They need a starter. If they get a starter and that's a 3rd starter, you could plug him in and move other guys down the chain, Walker, etc. But they need another start. You can't keep doing this. I mean, you put up enough runs on Monday night, you get a cycle out of JT Realmuto. You should win that game. You shouldn't lose that game. And whether it was Strahm, whether it was anybody else, Marte, anybody else in that bullpen, giving up a 9 spot, that's a killer. That's a team in Arizona that's owned the Phillies, and the Phillies need to win that game. You get that first game of the series, it's so big, but this is what Dave Dombrowski is going to have to do. It's not an easy task. We're still basically in early June, and with the additional wild card, that means there's even more teams that are in it that think they're in it, and they're not going to be willing to part with decent to quality starters because they still feel like they have a playoff shot. That's the hard thing. But the question you have to ask yourself is, can you wait until late July when the trade deadline rolls around? What kind of hole are you going to put yourself in if that's the case? Now, the good news is Wheeler, Taijuan Walker, Ranger Suarez, all look like they're really hitting their stride. The problem you have is, and the most worrisome thing about this Phillies team is Aaron Nola, because you don't know what's happening start to start. You don't know what's happening inning to inning. I mean, he could go through 3 innings and look great, get 2 outs in the 4th, 2 strikes on the batter. Guy hits a home run or gets hit. You know, he's given up a home run in 10 straight outings. I mean, that's the stuff of a borderline major leaguer, not Aaron Nola, who's playing for a contract, by the way. So major concern there. I think the bats, again, are starting to round into form. You know, Real Muto has been really cold. Maybe Monday night gets him going. Turner, although he didn't do much on Monday, looks like he's starting to get better. Castellanos has been an all-star flat out, plain and simple, all season long. He's been just excellent. He's been really good. They've gotten enough out of Stott, out of Marsh, you know, Schwarber getting going in June as he usually does. These are all good signs. I still think they're a playoff team. I don't think it's going to be easy. I think it's going to come down to the wire, and I think it's going to be tight, just like it was last year. I mean, let's not forget last year, they clinched on the very last day or very last series of the season. It's probably going to be one of those deals again this year. So I think things are headed in the right direction. But Jake says it's sad, but the Phillies might have dodged a bullet by not giving Nola the extension. I think Jake's right on. Like, in terms of the Nola extension and or contract in the offseason, this thing's really up in the air right now. Because here's the problem. If you're not a power pitcher, and I think we do fall a little bit too in love with the power numbers sometimes, because guys don't know how to pitch a lot of times. Just think about Nick Pivetta. But if you're not a power pitcher, and Nola isn't, even though he can get his velocity up pretty good, you got to be really on point with your mechanics, with your placement. And the problem is when he's not and he misses, these guys are going to catch up to 91 miles per hour. And you see what happens. It lands in the seats. So I think Jake makes a really good point. I mean, it's going to be tough to see, you know, what ends up happening. Joseph disagrees with the idea that the Flyers are going to win it before the Sixers. I hear you. Look, a lot of us haven't seen the Flyers win it in our lifetime. I was a little baby, in fact, the last time the Flyers won it. But let's not act like it's been, you know, yesterday for the Sixers either. It was 1983. So we're talking about 40 years for the Sixers, 48 years for the Flyers. That should never happen in a city like Philadelphia. Plain and simple. But the problem is, if you're looking at the Sixers right now, Daryl Morey might blow us away, man. They might blow us away. And we might say, how did he do that? How did he pull this off? But as we sit right here, right now, do you see a real good pathway to this team winning it? I mean, I worry about Embiid staying healthy. I worry about James Harden because I feel like Morey's obsessed with bringing him back. I don't want James Harden back. And even if Harden walks, the problem is you don't get the entirety of that salary because the Sixers are so far over the salary cap. You're going to have about $12 million to work with. So it's going to be really difficult to get this thing going right. And think about this. If you have another year where you don't win it, okay, where you don't advance past the second round, if you're the Sixers, you think Joel Embiid's going to want to continue to stick around? I mean, most NBA players, and even Lillard might get moved in this offseason, but most NBA players get to a point where if they don't feel like they're going to win it and the town starts to get a little bit frustrated with them, they generally want out. I think we're about one more season away from that with Joel Embiid. I really do. So that part's going to be very interesting to see what ends up happening there with the Sixers. And again, back to the point of what we saw here in these finals. They're not close to the Nuggets. If you're talking about trying to win it, they're just not. And Denver did it a little bit different way. I mean, they get Jokic in the second round. Jamal Murray has just blossomed into a stud. They make some really crafty trades. They get Aaron Gordon. They trade for Bruce Brown. They trade for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. They make good moves. They're a sound organization. And the Sixers basically, and Howard was talking about it a little bit earlier, man. I mean, the only thing they really have to show from the entirety of the process is Joel Embiid. There were too many misses. And it wasn't just Sam Hinkie. It was Hinkie. It was Colangelo. It was when Brett Brown was in charge. It was when Elton Brand was in charge. It's been Daryl Morey. There's been too many whiffs here. Simmons and Fultz. And we all could go through the Jason Tatum stuff. It was beyond that. It was Okafor. It was Noel. there were too many whiffs. Brian says Sixers, I feel maybe one more good run before they start to retool and build, hopefully around Maxey. Yeah, I don't know about a good run, Brian. It may be. I hope it is. But they're probably about one more run away from that. That's for sure. So, look, it's hard to see a path where you feel good about the Sixers right now. As far as the Eagles go, we're in that bit of a lull period, right? Because we're now about a month and change away from training camp starting, and it getting real. And it is going to be a challenge. I mean, when you get as far as they got, and can't quite get over the mountaintop, it's hard. It's hard that next year because the schedule gets harder. You do lose some players. But I think all in all, if you look at the way what they did to sort of retool, re-signing some guys who you maybe didn't think they were going to be able to re-sign, I think you couple that with the fact that you have a coach who's pretty relentless and driven, and you have a quarterback who has the perfect makeup. I mean, the absolute perfect makeup. I think that team will be there in the end. I really do. I think this Eagles team may have a record, and we've talked about this on the show, on the Rob Ellis Show here on ATD Radio. I think, 14-3 last year, that's unrealistic to think it's going to be the same this year. I think you could very well be looking at, 11 wins, and it sounds bad in the NFL when you have if you'd had three less wins than you had the year before, but that may not necessarily be the case. They're in a very tough division. They're out of division, and out of conference schedule is a hard one. And you have a defense that's going to take a little bit of time, I think, to sort of regroup because of the turnover with the roster, with the coaching staff, et cetera. So patience is going to be of the essence, at least early in this thing with the defense. Now, the offense, the same can't be said for them. The offense should hit the ground running. And I think that's what's going to propel them to wins early. And you're going to need that because later in the schedule is where it's going to get really, really tough because that part of the schedule is nasty. It's tough, especially coming out of the bye, although I do like the timing of the bye. So, yeah, look, we're in a fun time right now with the Phillies. You're in a figuring out portion when it comes to the Sixers because the draft is not all that far off either, and free agency. But, yeah, I mean, all in all, in Philadelphia sports, there's always a lot to talk about. All right, so next week, we will have Mark Zumoff. The week after that, we will have Yuki Washington. We just keep them rolling in terms of the great guests. So you want to tune in. You want to tell a friend. You want to tell as many people as you can tell because this is where it's happening right here, right here. All right. I want to thank Ralph. I want to thank Thomas, all of our friends here at A2D Radio doing a great job. And I'm looking forward to hanging out with you guys next week on the Rob Ellis Show on the A2D Radio Network.